Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Hess. I'm one of the co-directors of CREDO Action. I'm so glad to be here with Nancy Altman, the president of Social Security Works today. Welcome to everyone in the CREDO office and to everyone who's watching on Facebook. Social Security Works is one of our best partners when it comes to fighting against greedy billionaires and fighting for economic justice. They don't just defend Social Security, they fight to expand it. And they don't just take the fight to politicians in DC. They go after the entire ecosystem of corporate interests, big pharma, big insurance, Wall Street, that are mobilized to line their pockets by shredding Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and stealing earned benefits from millions of people. I'm grateful for their work, and I'm grateful to the CREDO members who have helped us donate more than $500,000 to Social Security Works since 2013. Really looking forward to today's conversation, and now I'll turn it over to Nancy.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for being here. You know, I am so happy to be here so soon after the election, because the election was a really big win for champions of and supporters of Social Security and Medicare. It paves the way, those midterm elections paved the way for real progress on expanding Social Security, expanding Medicare, and lowering drug prices. And it provides an opportunity to make progress on actually the entire progressive agenda. The reason is that polling makes clear that expanding Social Security, Medicare for all, lowering drug prices are wedge issues. They are ways to win Republican votes, to get crossover votes even from conservatives. This is an area that's really, really been heavily polled. It's been polled, you know, starting back in the 1930s with Gallup, and every organization polls it, conservative organizations, liberal organizations, every candidate polls it, and the polling all comes out the same way, that as polarized as we are as a country, we are not polarized over these issues. Republicans agree with Democrats, Tea Partiers agree with union members. And what they agree on is that Social Security and Medicare are more important than ever. They should not be cut, and indeed they should be expanded. So we actually did a poll last March, right before the election. And one other point to make about the polling, again across the board, is that it's not just widespread, it's deeply, deeply held views. Celinda Lake, pollster, well-known pollster in Democratic circles, has said that the feelings about these issues are so strong that they aren't just beliefs, they're values. So we took a poll last March and asked whether you'd be more or less likely to vote for candidates to expand Social Security, expand Medicare, and use the power of the federal government to lower drug prices. And you see the numbers. 66%, two-thirds of the country, 64% for expanding it, and a whopping 84% for controlling drug prices. So you can see that the candidates who take this position are going to win votes across the political spectrum. But for these issues to make a difference, there has to be a difference between the two parties or the two candidates running. Until a few years ago, both, unfortunately, Democrats and Republicans talked about, oh, we need a bipartisan solution, which is insider code, as you know, for let's cut benefits. Medicare was supposed to be the first step in Medicare for all. That's what the founders had in mind. It was started with seniors, expanded in 1972 to people with disabilities. So we've got the people with the highest medical needs, the most expensive part, in the system. Covering everybody else should have been easy. But instead, we had two chances, President Clinton and President Obama turned to market-based solutions and didn't build, which were, again, in the name of bipartisanship. And as you know, Big Pharma still controls Washington, D.C. Well, why is all of this? Because there has been a billionaire-funded campaign, decades old, to demonize government and to really have an attack to try to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But, and I'm so happy, and this is why I'm so happy to be here, that working with CREDO, starting back in 2013 with both, not just the financial support, which was essential, but also the member-driven activism that all of you share with us. We, I am so happy, have been able to change the Democratic Party so that there now is a big difference. Democrats went from a bipartisan solution to we've got to expand Social Security. 90%, or probably now with the new members that were just elected, it's probably higher than 90%, but in the current Congress, 90% of both the Democratic members in the House and Senate are on record for favoring expanding Social Security. And in fact, the 2016 Democratic Party platform said, well, I'll get to that, said, let me get the quote, quote, "We will fight every effort to cut, privatize, or weaken Social Security. Democrats will expand Social Security." So, as I said, there was a billionaire-funded campaign. We, all of us together, we didn't have the money that the billionaires had. We didn't have access to the mainstream media and the political establishment that the others had. But we had two things that were overpowering. We had the American people on our side, and it was the right, smart policy. So, as I said, we've changed the conversation. In addition, we also, although it's not yet the position of the Democratic Party officially, more than half the candidates who ran for office this cycle ran on Medicare for all. And controlling Big Pharma is becoming a bigger and bigger part of the emphasis and the momentum in Washington. Lloyd Doggett of Texas introduced a bill this summer on controlling drug prices, and I'm happy to let you know that next week, during Thanksgiving week, Senator Sanders is introducing a bill on controlling drug prices, and the week after that, Elizabeth Warren is introducing another bill. So there's starting to be momentum, there's starting to be energy around those issues. Medicare for All was introduced in the House. It had 122 co-sponsors. And in the Senate, if you look at the co-sponsors, I sort of joke it's a who's who of who plans to run for president in 2020. So, and in addition to all of that, two new caucuses were formed last summer and last fall. The Expand Social Security Caucus, you won't be surprised, co-chaired by Senator Sanders and Warren together in the Senate with 19 of their members. And in the House, there were actually 5 co-chairs that crossed from moderate Democrats to progressive Democrats, all parts of the country. And they started the caucus with 150 members. They also formed a Medicare for All caucus with over 70 founding members. And all of this effort, all of our work together, our building coalition together with seniors groups and women's groups, people with disabilities, low-income groups. You know, we have a broad-based coalition. All of our fighting, all of our grassroots outreach, all of our line in the sand, no cuts, all of our battling in defense, because we always have to play defense against efforts to cut all of these, cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. The message, we've been successful not only in changing the Democratic position, but we're having, the American people are beginning to hear the message. The untold story of last week's midterm elections was the vote of seniors. According to CNN exit polls, if you compare 2014 to 2018, there is a 7 percentage point shift among those over age 65 who voted from Republican to Democratic. In addition, retirees now gave more money to Democratic candidates than Republicans for the first time since donation tracking started in 1990. So those are big, and these are, of course, bread and butter issues for that part of the population. So that shows we are getting through. Now, if I'm honest, I got to give the Republicans some credit. They couldn't contain themselves. Before the ink was even dry on the tax giveaway to their billionaire donors, Marco Rubio and Paul Ryan were on the, all over television saying, just like, the joke about the person who kills his parents and then pleads to the court for leniency because he's an orphan. These guys gave away all this money, drove up the deficit, and said, oh my gosh, now we're going to have to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And in fact, the biggest help was literally 3 weeks before the election. Many of you may have seen this. Mitch McConnell went on Bloomberg News and said the same thing 3 weeks before the election. And all I could think was, if this is what he was saying 3 weeks before the election, what would they do if they retained the House? What would they do? How emboldened would they be? So we at Social Security Works saw it both as a threat, but also as a gift. So I want to play for you a video that we produced very quickly and rushed over again with CREDO's support to, Ronald Reagan was no fan of Social Security, but we did think that this was a catchy way to expose to the country what Mitch McConnell and the Republicans had in store if they were to have won in this last election. So if we want to play that video.
What's going on with the debt?
It's very disturbing, and it's driven by the three big entitlement programs that are very popular: Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
Social Security has nothing to do with the deficit. Social Security is totally funded by the payroll tax levied on employer and employee.
That's 70% of what we spend every year. The subject we were just discussing, the funding of the government, is about 30% of what we spend.
If you reduce the outgo of Social Security, that money would not go into the general fund to reduce a deficit. It would go into the Social Security Trust Fund. So Social Security has nothing to do with balancing a budget or erasing or lowering the deficit.
As I say, it got the word out, but that was only one of the many lies. We all heard the lies about pre-existing conditions through this, but there has been, they're using the deficit as an excuse because Ronald Reagan is exactly right. Social Security does not add a penny to the deficit. But that's only one of the many lies they tell about these programs. Another one, which has really seeped into public consciousness, is the idea that somehow, all of a sudden, the wealthiest country in the world, at the wealthiest moment in our history, can no longer afford Social Security, cannot afford what every other country has, Medicare for all. These are lies that the younger you are, and this is part of the billionaire-funded campaign to try to convince people of these facts. So let me show you what the truth is. Ronald Reagan was correct about the deficit. Here's some facts about the cost of these programs. This is from the most recent trustees report. There are about 40 actuaries work at the Social Security Administration and project out 75 years every single year. So this is from the 2018 report. And as you see, as a percentage of gross domestic product, according to our actuaries who look at this day in and day out, Social Security won't cost much more at the end of the 21st century as it does today. Whether we expand Social Security or cut Social Security is a matter of values. And in fact, if you look at this chart, this is what other countries spend today on their counterpart old age survivors disability insurance program. As you see from this, that at the end of this century, in 2100, we will still be spending about half what all of these others, virtually all the other industrialized countries, spend on their populations to assure economic security. So that's Social Security. Well, what about Medicare for All? I keep hearing it's going to cost all these trillions of dollars. Dean Baker, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, has a calculator on his website from which this was taken. What this shows is the per capita, what would happen to the federal budget with different scenarios if we had the same per capita health care costs as others. The very top line that you see is if the Affordable Care Act were repealed, then our deficit would go higher. The other line that's going down slightly is under the current Affordable Care Act, where the deficit's not really growing or shrinking. All those other four lines that are going down shows what our budget would be doing if we had the same per capita costs as these various other countries, France, United Kingdom, Japan, Canada. And as you see, we would be in surplus. And the way to get those same per capita costs is to have a very efficient system, have Medicare for all. So those are just, so we've got to get this information out, and we've got to continue to build momentum on these popular crossover issues. This is the way to win political power for the foreseeable future. In the upcoming Congress, as I started out by saying, this is a big win. We're going to see a lot of progress starting in January. The numbers in the caucuses, the number who co-sponsor, there are about a dozen pieces of legislation on expanding Social Security, the Medicare for All legislation, the lowering drug prices legislation, those two caucuses, the Expand Social Security caucus, the Medicare caucus, those numbers are going to surge because so many candidates ran and won on these issues. Most important, though, one of the champions of expanding Social Security, a man by the name of Representative John Larson, who's not a progressive, but he's a moderate from Connecticut, but is committed to expanding Social Security. He will be chairing, he will have the gavel of the Social Security Subcommittee of the Ways and Means Committee of the House. And he has already told us that he will have hearings probably starting in January on why we need to expand Social Security and how we should expand Social Security. We're working with him not only on hearings, but really trying to get a vote in committee. And we're pushing for the same with other members with Medicare for All and drug prices. It's important to get there's a lot of jockeying going on post-election now of power, and it's really important to get champions. We've already got John Larson chairing the Social Security Subcommittee. It's important to have the champions of Medicare for All and drug prices on the relevant committees so we can get hearings and votes on all of these issues. The hearings, and we've got to push the leadership because the leadership will be in charge of what comes to the floor. We've got to push for votes on all of these issues to drive the conversation. Hearings will continue to educate the American people that they've been sold a bill of goods by these billionaires, that we can, not only can we afford Social Security, Medicare for All, we can use the power of the federal government to lower drug prices, but we must do it. But votes are also essential, because it will put the Republicans on the defensive. They will have to find, they love to say they're in favor of Social Security, but they are not. It's obvious from their legislation, and it's obvious from their, they always have a but in there, and they say it. It's important to get them on record, force them to take a vote, and that way they're going to be in a bind. They're either going to go with their billionaire donors and vote against expanding Social Security, or they're going to go with their constituents. But either way, we win. We either get progressive legislation, or what I think is more likely to happen is that we will have a vote, we will have clear issues in 2020. The Republicans won't be able to they'll try, but they will be clearly on record. But we always must be on guard. As I said, this is billionaire funded. The opponents are well-financed and they're dishonest. They'll say they love Social Security. They're trying to save it. Paul Ryan is now, fortunately, I think we should all cheer, out of Congress. But there are many, many others like him. So I would like to end with another video, and this is words of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who formed this program and had the vision of Medicare for All, warning us about Paul Ryan. So if we can play the...
Let me warn you, and let me warn the nation against the smooth evasion that says, of course we believe these things. We believe in Social Security.
Social Security, a cornerstone of financial security for millions of retirees, widows, and disabled Americans.
Cross our hearts and hope to die. We believe in all these things, but we do not like the way the present administration is doing that.
The current pay-as-you-go program of the 20th century simply cannot fulfill its promises of the 21st century.
Just turn them over to us.
If we secure this program now, as my roadmap proposes to do, we can strengthen Social Security for those in and near retirement and make certain that it is there for future retirees.
Just turn them over to us. We will do all of them. We will do more of them. We will do them better. And most important of all, the doing of them will not cost anybody anything.
The roadmap reforms would make Social Security permanently solvent without requiring painful benefit cuts or tax increases.
Conclude. Franklin Roosevelt, on August 14, 1935, when he signed Social Security into law, described it as a cornerstone, not yet complete, on which to build. And by Social Security, he and the other founders meant guaranteed employment. It meant a good-paying job at living wage. He meant protection, short-term and long-term disability protection, survivors protection, retirement protection, and most important, health insurance for everyone, and health and sick pay for those who need the health insurance and need health care. So let's build on that cornerstone. Let's take the momentum that CREDO has energized the progressive movement with. Let's fight for all of these things, and let's remember, though, we always have to defend against, as Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked to us, the smooth evasions of those on the other side. Thank you very much.
Do you want to just call in some people for questions?
And I'm happy to.
I have a couple, but if other people have, I'm happy to have others go first. I'll ask one and then people can think.
And I'm happy to keep talking, so if you don't have questions.
And you have to repeat the question, I'm just reminding you. How do we get Democrats who aren't yet on board to be part of the Medicare for All and expand Social Security caucuses?
Excellent question. The question was, how do we get Democrats that are not yet on board for expanding Social Security, Medicare for All, lowering drug prices? How do we get the rest of the coalition, the rest of the caucus on it? For the Social Security, we're all just about there. It is the official position of the Democratic Party, and the overwhelming number of members are on it. John Larson, the one I mentioned, who is going to be chairing the Social Security subcommittee, has legislation, and he has over 170 co-sponsors. And I just got an email from his staff saying that they've already prepared packets for all the new members. So he's on the case. Same thing in the Senate. We've got Senator Sanders, Senator Warren really pushing for these. Medicare for All is a little bit of a bigger lift, for one thing, and controlling drug prices, which I see as part of that. It's a little bit of a harder lift because, quite frankly, the donors, they get a lot, I mean, Social Security, they get donors from Wall Street. Here they get donors from Big Pharma and the insurance companies, and they're the ones who are going to lose. The rest of us will win. Everyone will gain, and they still will make profits, but just not as large profits. So we've got to keep up the pressure. We've got to, even when you're thanking, you know, if you've got good representatives, good senators, which you guys have, or if, you know, if you've got people who take those positions, you've got to thank them and ask them what they're going to do more. You've got to continue to push them. For ones on the other side, you've got to threaten them that if they're not going to go with what the American people want, they're going to primary them. And we've got power, and we're increasing our power. And as I say, the power comes because we have the overwhelming majority of the American people with us. So we've just got to keep fighting. Now is not the time. As I said, we did well in 2018. We're all tired. We're just hitting the holidays, but we've got to keep pushing forward. Now is the time to go harder.
I have a question.
Yes.
Aside from thanking our elected officials, what else can CREDO members and other activists do to help out with this pressure?
Well, we're playing an inside game of trying to get the right people on the committees. But we've got to, again, you know, emails are important, phone calls are important, town hall meetings, you know, town hall meetings are a chance to get to them, going to their offices. That kind of pressure really does work. They really respond to it. They respond in numbers. So we've got to do that. We've got to, of course, continue, and you all are so instrumental in supporting the range of progressive organizations so all of us can continue the fight. And the other point, and you're really an example of this, but it's something we really think about at Social Security Works, and that is that not to be in our own silos. All of these issues are important. So, for example, we're very involved in the immigration fight because a way to make, and again, I don't want to minimize it, it's a moral issue, and front and center, we should be making the moral case about immigration. But for those people among us who care only about their pocketbook, we at Social Security Works make the case that bringing in immigration, increasing immigration, and the actuaries have done all the numbers, increasing immigration makes these programs more affordable. So if you want to expand Social Security and Medicare, one way to increase more money is to bring in increase our immigration. So to fight on all these issues, we fight with people who are concerned about climate change, with immigration on these issues, and they fight with us. We try to get children's groups to fight with seniors, and seniors fight for more benefits for children. So some of it also is to be broad-based in our approach. Yes.
So I've been here since the election. I've been hearing from some progressive friends who fear a Trump re-election in 2020 that maybe the Democrats should be tacking back to the middle and de-emphasizing the messages like Medicare for All and abolish ICE. How would you respond to that?
Thank you. The question was, and I forgot to, I'm sorry, I didn't repeat that question, but the question was a lot of fear about Trump winning in 2020. I personally fear that even if he loses in 2020, he's not going to leave office, but definitely winning in 2020 is concern. And there are a lot of Democrats who say, oh, we can't be too progressive, we've got to tack to the middle, third way and all of that. And how do I respond to that? I think that's the way to assure that he's going to win in 2020 is tacking to the middle. If you've got a choice between a real Republican and Republican light, you're going to take a real Republican. You've got to have a choice. And we have the American people with us. We are a majority on these issues. And in fact, one problem we've had is that Donald Trump said in the campaign, hey, I'm not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Now, he was lying. And if you looked at his record before he started running for office, he talked about it being a Ponzi scheme and raising the age and all of this stuff. But we actually, sometimes when we go after him in our emails, we'll get a number of our lists coming back to us saying, wait, he said he wasn't going to cut these programs. So the last thing we should be doing is tacking to the middle. I think we've got to offer the American people a very bold vision. And you can see from the energy that Bernie Sanders generated in 2016 that the American people respond to that. There were a lot of people who voted, apparently. I mean, there were some people who voted for Sanders and voted for Trump. And I think we've got to defeat Trump. We've got to put a strong candidate, you know, here, I'm hoping for Robert Mueller, but that may not happen. But what we've got to do, I think, is stand for ideas, be authentic about it, work for them, talk to our friends and neighbors, and this is part of the answer to the last question of what can we do to get these votes. And it's really, you know, person to person is a very powerful way to communicate. That's how they did it back in the 1930s before the internet, and they had this movement that got us this progressive legislation. And it is time to do the same thing and just, you know, don't shy away at Thanksgiving dinner if you don't want to make waves. Talk to people who disagree, and they won't disagree on these issues. I love going on conservative media because they all agree. The host doesn't, but the audience, I know, always agrees when I talk about, hey, this is an earned benefit, don't let them reach into your pocket and take it out of your pocket. They all go, yeah, I've been paying since I was 16. I said, yes. So I think we should not shy away from the fight, we should join the fight, and that's the way to win.
Okay. Well, that's why we love Social Security Works, right? Because they're going to hold the hard lines with us. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, and thank you, really. I can't emphasize enough how important the work you all do and how much all of us, the whole progressive community, really is indebted to you.
Oh, thank you so much. We are so grateful to you guys, too.
And I'll give you a hug.
Yay! Now I can pretend to come.
That's right.